Hey guys, it's Ryan from Ryan Anthony's Heating and Air Conditioning. Today I'm Ryan from Long Island Building and Contracting Consultants. These Fujitsu mini splits, they have 4 options. Did a quick case study on a block that I actually grew up in West Babylon. Hey guys, it's Ryan from Ryan Anthony's Heating and Air Conditioning and Long Island Building and Contracting Consultants with Frank. And I want to introduce you guys to Mr. Mike Greco, who is a very good friend of mine and was actually a major player in the help of growing this company, which I do owe him a lot. So I'll start with that story real quick, and then I'll let Mike talk. But Mike, I guess you guys took me to lunch, like 5 years ago?
I think that's how it started, yeah.
6 years ago.
Yeah.
And took me to lunch. Mike saw my account, growing rapidly, and kind of saw it as an idea to, one, I guess, latch on to me as a customer, which is, and also me commit to you guys, but they let me extend the line of credit, so, which is huge with growing your business.
Where were you working at the time?
Blackman.
Okay.
Yes, Blackman.
I was the heating director, or the director of heating for Blackman.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. So it took me to lunch, and then basically, by giving me that cushion, helped me expand to where we are today. So I owe Mike a huge thing. I tell him all the time that I do, and just the fact that he noticed it and brought it to the owner of Blackman's attention to allow me to do that has changed a lot of things.
Well, yeah, there's a lot. I had a lot come from a lot of experience. As
Yes.
you know, my family owned an oil company I was in that business for 32 years at Greco Brothers Fuel Corp in Bethpage.
Right.
So I learned how to service accounts, but I also learned how to recognize potential. And recognizing potential and doing it the right way, not from the standpoint of just sales,
Right.
but building a relationship.
Yes.
I can honestly say in the 50 years that I've been in business, I never gave somebody a story that I didn't follow through on.
Right.
And so when we met, I saw the potential. And then you asked me to do that special favor.
Yeah.
I kind of circumvented all the rules and regulations
Yes.
of the people I had to go to, and I went right to the president.
Yeah, there's no red tape.
And I said, listen, this is what I think. It's obviously your call, but this is what I think, this is what I feel, and my gut's pretty good.
Yeah.
And hence the relationship built.
And just numbers-wise, I think at that point when you came to me, we were doing like maybe 200 or 250,000 a year. We grew it up to almost, I don't know, 850,000 in that small time.
Right.
So his hunch was right, and it helped me, and it was great.
And of course we nurtured that relationship.
Absolutely.
And, doing different things. One of the things I did at Blackman was run contractor trips.
Yeah.
And only because I am an outdoorsman. As I said to Frank before, I'm not your typical Long Islander. I'm not really a big fan of the beach, and I don't like golf.
Unless you're fishing.
Unless you're fishing on the beach. I like a sporting clay shooter. I like traveling to the Florida Keys to fly fish. I like traveling to Montana to fish. So
You were actually sponsored by Beretta.
one time in my younger days, clay target shooting, I was partially sponsored by Beretta.
Right.
And I was partially sponsored by a ammo company from Cyprus called Victory Cartridge. It's actually owned by a couple of guys from New Jersey. So, but that was like 20 years ago when the reflexes were a little bit better in my 40s than they are in the 60s. So I'm still pretty good, but I'm not as good as I was.
No, he's good. I've been with him. He's very good.
At Sporting Clays is a great game, just as an aside. It's a great game. It's played throughout the country.
Not as easy as it looks. It's
No,
not like a Nintendo Duck Hunt. It's not.
not in the vicinity.
No.
So
There is a technique.
it is, and it's similar to golf because it's not a team sport. It's you against the target, like it's you against the ball.
Right.
So you better have control of your emotions and your thoughts and everything like that in order to get good. Or you can just go play and have fun.
Right.
But that's not my personality. Just
Play to
play
win.
and have fun.
No. So basically what we like to do is maybe you could revert back to your high school days and go from there to where you are now.
Well,
And the things you've learned and
okay. High school days, actually in my high school sophomore summer, I was accepted into a program run by Cornell University called the Farm Cadet Program because I originally wanted to be a veterinarian. And I went to St. Joseph's College here on Long Island, was my high school. That was Seton Hall High School. And I had some pretty good grades. And my father, I remember, dragged me up to, I think it's Utica, where Cornell University is. Yeah. And they said, well, based on the grades you're getting now, yeah, we might be considered for the Cornell University veterinary program. But the one thing that might be better is if you look at this farm cadet program. So I worked on a dairy farm. up in Hudson, New York, the whole summer. And if I learned anything in my life, it was not to become a dairy farmer.
Did you get paid anything?
No, you didn't get paid. You were given room and board, and I learned that cows have to be milked twice a day, every day, 365 days a year. They don't take Christmas off. There are no vacations. And as hard as you and I think we worked, there's nobody that works as hard as a dairy farmer.
Yeah.
But that particular summer, I also had met a girl. This is when I'm 16, by the way, who became my wife at 21, and who is still my wife after 48 years. We had 2 wonderful kids together, and we're still together. But I realized that the veterinary thing wasn't going to happen. My family had a successful fuel oil company that my father and my uncle built, I think in 1945, after my father got back from the Marine Corps after World War II.
And what was the name of that?
It was Greco Brothers Fuel Corp, and it was started by Sal J. Greco and his youngest brother, Michael Greco. I'm Michael Jr. And they started this business in Bethpage, bought an oil truck, did service. My uncle had a very successful plumbing business, I believe, since 1929. So as a good older brother, he said to the kid brother when he came back, what are you going to do with yourself? And I don't think my father knew. And they started this business, and it was based in Bethpage. And I can honestly say that probably the majority of the customers were the Grumman blue-collar workers, because at that time Grumman's was building and building and building.
Yeah, my grandfather worked.
Yeah, and a lot of our customers were, were the Grumman people from Bethpage. Well, so I wanted to go in the family business now, because I wanted to get married at 21. And a quick story, love my dad. My dad was a tough Marine. I'm the oldest of 5. First time I worked for him, when I went into the business, after I cleaned oil burners, I drove oil trucks, and the first time I did things, I remember I worked about 60 hours. I walked into his office, I got my first paycheck, which was handwritten, and I was paid for 40. And I said, Dad, you made a mistake. And he said, what mistake did I make? I said, you only paid me for 40. I worked like 55, 60 hours. He says, no, he goes, you get paid for 40, and the other hours are because your name is on the side of the truck.
Donated.
And you're going to earn it.
Yeah.
And he goes, and to be honest with you, I really want to chase you back to school, so nobody's going to earn it more than you are.
Okay.
And so I did. So I cleaned oil burners, I drove an oil truck. First I was the in-town driver, so I drove and delivered oil in Bethpage. My Uncle Dominic at the time would route it, because at that time the oil trucks, you could only pull them from one side. There was no thing as the two-sided. Then I did oil burner service for about 9 years, 24 hours a day.
I know the feeling.
I mean, I would have people come, and I remember my wife and I being out for the day and coming back, and there'd be a sign on the door. Somebody hung a note that said, I have no heat. This was
no
wonderful.
cell phones.
No cell phones. It was answering service. And they would
come.
I mean, they were Sundays. I remember doing 21, 24 service calls myself for the day. It got so bad that my mother-in-law and my father-in-law, who were wonderful people, wouldn't come over on a Sunday during the winter because they would be too nervous, because I'd be eating dinner at the door. I had a blue uniform on. I was dirty. You remember? Well, you don't remember, but oil burners, if you worked on some of the old ones, were filthy.
Well, in your time, you rebuilt the equipment. I was at the tail end of that, where maybe some things were rebuilt, but a majority of it was, if a pump was bad, you replaced it.
Yeah.
You guys rebuilt them.
We rebuilt things.
Because labor was cheaper than parts then.
Yeah. I mean, I can tell you that the most feared part to change was an oil burner transformer. I mean, we could change them now in our suit.
Right.
But back then, you had to. I mean, I remember rigging up in my Ford Econoline van a light system, because at 2 o'clock in the morning, I was trying to figure out how to match a certain plate to a certain transformer to get Mr. and Mrs. Jones, because the rule of thumb at that time was you didn't leave anybody without heat. It's the same way now.
Same way. Yeah. Some people don't care as much.
Exactly.
But yes, there's a lot of stress.
Yeah.
I don't think people understand the stress. It's not always the money with what we do. It's the stress, and that's why we stress you need more. I think Mark was telling me that for every 5 guys in the heating or plumbing world that retire, there's only one place. So there's a serious problem with this right now. And I mean, granted, who wants to do this kind of life? But in my eyes, it's night and day from technology when I started or when you started, especially.
Absolutely.
So what it is now. I mean, if you do the right thing, it's not the same. Service
no,
levels are way down.
And it teaches you so much. I mean, what did it teach me back in those days? It taught me customer service.
Yeah. Yes.
It cost me, it taught me the importance of hard work, being honest with people. It was an invaluable lesson as I slowly became an executive
Yes.
with no special schooling or training to becoming an executive. You know, when my father finally said, okay, starting Monday, you're coming in the office. Well, it was a whole different thing to learn, but the lessons I had learned earlier helped me become a better employer.
I think that's the best, because you know every angle, every entity of the life, of the business, of everything, and I think.
You know, once I sat behind that desk, I had to learn how to deal with personnel, deal with customers from a different perspective, and it taught me invaluable life lessons that I carried on in my successful business life later on.
Yeah.
So you're right. You know, those early days were a lot tougher in my early days, and things are a lot different now. But it's a wonderful trade that you know, a young person doesn't have to go to 6 years of college and get a political science degree or something like that, and they can make a good living and be very fulfilled in what they do for people.
And it's rewarding. You walk into a customer's house who's cold, has been waiting, you go and you fix it, you get them heat again. It's like the best gift you can give anybody at that time. You know, granted there's doctors, there's different people who do different things, but at that time you are the hero.
Absolutely.
That's a great feeling.
I
I like
remember,
it.
and I'm sure you remember them too.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember the service calls on a Christmas, on a New Year's Eve,
Yeah.
or wherever, and you felt kind of crummy going on the call, but you felt wonderful coming afterwards.
Yeah.
You really did.
Yeah.
You know, you
Usually got a decent tip on Christmas.
Yeah.
Some people didn't tip at all, but hey, you know, it's no
That's
big deal.
life.
That is what it is.
That's
So now you ran Greco for how many
I
years?
assisted in the running of Greco.
Yes.
We had other family members. I had a cousin, I had a brother that came in.
Right.
So assisted Greco. The family decided they wanted to sell the business in 2000. Asked me to do most of the negotiations for the sale. We were very successful in those negotiations.
Right.
And
Now you got a terminal there too?
we had a terminal. Yeah. We had two locations. We had a main office on Broadway, Bethpage, and then we had a 500,000 gallon tank in another location. So both were sold. Negotiated and sold. And then I had negotiated a consultant's agreement for myself for a year or so. So I really didn't have to do anything for about a year or two.
Right.
But then, out of the woodwork, I got a phone call from a headhunter looking for a Long Island representative for the Weil McLean Boiler Company. And I happened to have been a Weil McLean installer. And I took the job. I flew to Michigan City, Indiana. I was interviewed. I got the job. So I became the Long Island rep for Weil McLean. I think it was 2003.
Okay.
But I had one big account, and that big account was Blackman Plumbing Supply. At that time, they did about $8 million with Weil McLean.
Wow.
And it was my job to keep this account happy
Right.
and Blackman's contractors happy. So if there was a problem job, a problem with a boiler, a John DePalmer or a Mark Smitzy from Blackman would call and say, you got to go see Ryan Burnett over at Ryan Anthony's and see what the problem is.
Right.
And it was my problem to make it straight. Well, to make a long story short, Blackman liked what I did, I guess, because they kept calling me in the office and offering me a job.
Right.
And I finally took the job.
Right.
And it was the best decision I ever made in my life.
Right.
I went to work for Blackman in May of 2005.
So you only won McLean for 2 years.
Yeah, about, yeah,
A year and a half.
about a year and a half. And I went to work for Blackman. And you mentioned the gentleman before, Mark Smithy, he was my boss.
Yeah.
Kevin Sasson, blah, blah,
Yeah.
and I remember my bosses.
Mark, you
Yeah.
was in
Yeah.
this.
Great people. And I can honestly say that those 14 years I retired in September of 2019. Those 14 years I did with Blackman were my most favorite work years.
Because you were able to grow something at such a higher level.
Yeah.
Right?
I was able to use all my contacts. I was able to go and meet people. I always wanted to deal in my life, I wanted to deal with the other businessman. I love dealing with the end user, but I had never experienced dealing with other contractors. And I enjoyed it. I mean, I knew the people, I knew the main players in the Petros, and I knew the main players in the General Utilities and the other companies that were on Long Island. And as you and I met, I learned about you also. And it was a great 14 years. And I enjoyed the time I worked for them. When Mark Smithy first sold me the job, I live in Bethpage. I'm born and raised in Bethpage, and their corporate office was in Bethpage.
Right.
And they basically said, well, come on, I'll give you 5 minutes right for an office.
It's an easy sell.
It was an easy sell.
Yes.
It was easy. Of course, then they ended up moving my office to Bayport.
Right.
So I had, which still wasn't bad, because the fact of the matter is, my high school that I talked about earlier was one exit further.
Right.
So it was the first commute I ever dealt with in my life, because Greco Brothers Fuel Corp was located in Bethpage also.
Right. So you were in Bethpage your whole career.
Yeah, everything.
And then
Yeah.
well, Blackman, you're all over because you basically now you were head of the heating department for how many years there?
14.
So
Well, I would say, maybe 13, and then I brought in at that time, Robert Mannheimer was the president.
Yes.
I was approaching my middle to late 60s.
Right.
And he said, listen, I don't want you retiring.
Right.
What I want you to do is still stay with me, but I don't want you working as much.
Right.
So start training somebody.
Right.
And
John
De Palma had been like my right arm
Yeah.
for many
John's a
years.
very close friend of mine. We're all connected,
Yeah.
so it's good.
So that John helped me the last 2 years. So I guess the last year and a half was spent working together, helping John just kind of learn the computer system and learning the people and where to go. And he was very actually his heating knowledge is probably far surpasses mine.
Right.
Because he was a hands-on guy for a lot of years.
Yeah.
So,
It's good.
John's a good guy.
yeah.
I like getting John and Lance together.
Yeah, they're good guys. John's a lot of fun. I'm in constant contact with him. I talk to John often.
Yeah. Because he's your successor, really.
Yeah, and I kind of feel kind of responsible for him to be a success, and he was right from the first. I think John and I were together maybe a little over a year and a half, and within the first 6 months, John had it down. He knew what to do. We would go see customers together. If there was a problem, John went and solved it. I was there if he needed me.
We used to tease him because we'd say he was getting his Greco starter uniforms and starter wearing blazers because Mike always wore a blazer.
Right.
And so Lance would especially get on about it. It's the Mike starter jacket and whatever else. It'd be fun.
Yeah, John.
He's easy to poke fun, but he's great.
Yeah, John was funny. Especially, I'll tell you one quick funny story about John. I go to this meeting, I think it was one of the service managers meeting, and John is dressed very nicely. Shirt's tucked in, which never was. He usually wore his Tony Soprano shirt out.
Right.
And I made him tuck it in. And I looked at him, and he walked in and he looked at me like, what's up, boss? And I said, where's your belt? And he goes, I couldn't find it. I go, you got one belt?
Yes.
So
We'll have John on here too.
Yeah.
So don't worry, John, you get your chances.
Yeah, you'll get back
your
chance.
remarks back at Mike.
So then he started coming in, so they were both working in the office, and now John's coming in every day in nice slacks and a sports jacket, and his level of professionalism went right up, and he's really good at what the job does.
Absolutely.
He's really good, and he's a credit to the company. Now, that company has changed. It's been sold. It's Ferguson Enterprises now.
Right.
And John is, I'm sure, a very important cog in their wheel.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, don't get too much on them.
So what are you doing now?
I'm retired, so
It's the perfect life.
I'm retired now. I'm enjoying it. I'm around the house. I have 2 hunting dogs that I take care of, and I took them for a run early this morning to keep them in shape. I'm doing some fishing on the beach. I'm continuing on my sporting clay shooting. I have had a couple job offers, as a representative, and a couple days a week maybe, and I'm contemplating doing that. I'm just not rushing into anything with the whole situation with COVID and things like that. I'm just waiting for all that to subside. And,
Now you attribute all this, like I keep stressing, even when you sold Greco Brothers and you moved on and went to McLean or went to Black, you still didn't work 40-hour work. You worked. You answered emails at all times and phone calls at all hours, even in your cleaner times of work.
Yes.
And not so much fixing oil burners.
Yeah, I would, the calendar and the clock were never something that I operated by.
Right.
It's something the job was done when the job was done.
Right.
If I had to, if I had to stay, when I worked for Wild McLean, if I was out in Southampton, working when the Wild McLean Ultra first came out, there were a lot of problems.
Yes.
If I was out in Southampton working with one of the contractors out there and I had to work late to help them out, with the tech service of Wild McLean back and forth on the phone, I did so.
Right.
If I was in the middle of reports or if there was some problems at Blackman and I had to stay later at Blackman, I did so. Just the calendar and the clock never ruled my life. It's not going back to my dad's lesson. It's not always a 40-40 game, but you're working 60. It doesn't always work that way.
Yeah.
So.
No, but you have what you have because you worked hard, and like you said, you didn't operate by a 40-hour work week, and that's what we really are stressing.
Yeah, and the other thing too is when you are an employer, you can't just work 40 hours because the fires that you have to put out spring up all day, every day.
Yes.
And sometimes those fires are done by lunchtime and you can go do something else, and sometimes they extend well into the evening.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, even when you work for somebody, and I like to tell people I was actually on three sides of the fence.
Yeah.
Because I was an employer, I worked for a manufacturer, and then I worked for a distributor. I was an employee for a distributor also. So
very well rounded.
Multifaceted.
yeah, I did a lot of different things. So when you are an employee of a good employer like I was for 14 years with Blackman, they appreciated what I did, and they showed their appreciation in many, many different ways. And and it's not always in a paycheck, though it was very often.
Yes.
Sometimes it's just the recognition of, hey, you're doing a good job for us.
Right.
I mean, when I retired and I left my office, I took a couple of my President's Awards with me.
Right.
That, because my division would lead Blackman,
Right.
1 year, maybe not the next year, then the following year. I was proud of those accomplishments. And when you have a good employer and you're an employee, you want to make them happy.
Well, that sense of accomplishment, when you got in 05, right, 05 to when you retired in 19, what percentage, you don't have to say a number unless but what percentage did the heating department grow in those years? Just from you being there and pushing.
With the help of people like a John DePalma,
It's not just one person, right?
With the team that would work and help me out,
Right.
we built it over 50%.
50%.
Yeah, we've built it over 50%. It was around, don't hold me to the numbers, it was around 30 mil when I got in there. We built it well up over into the high 60s, into the low 70s.
Wow.
Yeah. So, but it's because everybody pulled together, the branches pulled together, the managers pulled together.
Right.
We had what the customer wanted. I was responsible for, as the director of heating for the company, I had to look at different lines and say, okay, this line is working for us,
Right.
and this line is not.
Right.
And
Why is it not?
Right, and then if the line wasn't working for us, I would have to go to the people above me and say, I think we should get rid of this line. And I'd have to have legitimate reasons why. And if I was going to bring a new line in,
Right.
that was also, that had to be, there were a sales manager above me and a president above me. But there were some successful lines that we brought into the company, and there's unsuccessful lines that we, as a team, decided to remove.
Right.
So that's just.
And as a supervisor, you were able to convey your message of hard work to everybody underneath you and get the most out of them.
Yeah.
So that it wasn't just
You
put in the hours and you got it.
Yeah. And again, I go back to the early days. You build a relationship up with guys. The people, not the people I work with. Knew I would stop in. I'd say hello. We'd go to lunch. What's the problem? If they had a particular problem, we would try to work out the problem together. I can honestly say, I don't remember. I think Blackman was up to. I don't know what things are now, but Blackman was up to about 21 different branches.
Yeah.
And then and at one time we bought a company out in New Jersey. And then Mr. Manheimer at the time, who was our president, asked me to be part of the employment offer committee there, asked me to set up a couple branches over there for heating.
Right.
So things started to expand, and it expanded the importance of the position of the director of heating for Blackman. So I took pride in that. And that's, that was one of the reasons, the dress and everything else had to do with what I felt the professionalism of that position for that company. I wanted to represent that company well.
And you did.
Whether I did or not, I wanted to.
Right.
I wanted them to know that I like this position, I like working for this company, and I want the very best for this company going forward. And that, was reflected in the numbers.
Absolutely. Very huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, But it's a great field for a young person to go into. Nowadays, you're seeing too many wasted college degrees. I mean, I paid for 2 college degrees for 2 kids, and they're both very, very successful.
Are they both using the degree?
Only one.
Only one.
But my daughter is very
Well, I
successful.
guess you could say he's still using it, but not to
Yeah.
the abil- not to.
Right.
He actually, we could talk about it, your son, he has I guess a charter, or how would you word it?
My son started, my daughter has been teaching special education for over 20 years.
Right.
And she went to school to become a teacher.
Right.
She loves it. It's a vocation with her. The more serious the problem the child has, the happier she is.
Right.
My son was a anthropology degree with a minor in biology, but he started a fishing charter business down in the Florida Keys,
Right.
and is very successful.
Which you rubbed off on him with that. You just took it to another level.
Yeah, he took what I considered fun.
Yeah.
He's taken it to a very successful
Yeah.
business. So he's enjoyed life. I remember when he first started the business saying to me, "You want to be climbing in and out of a boat every day of your life when you're 65 years old?" And he said, "Yeah, I really can't think of anything else better."
Absolutely.
So
No,
he's down.
I went down there with Mike to go,
Right.
we were going to go for talking, but the conditions weren't right.
Yeah.
But I saw Mike hook into a sawfish, right?
Sawfish, yeah.
It took him like a mile away from us. Our boats were pretty close one day,
Yeah.
and it like huge,
Yeah.
huge sawfish.
So the trade, the heating and cooling, the HVAC trade, the heating trade, whichever label you want to put on it,
Yeah.
it's a very fulfilling trade. And what we said earlier was so true. The equipment has evolved
Yeah.
so much
Yeah.
that really you get to be technical. You need to know how to use a meter.
We weren't using combustion analyzers. There were no combustion analyzers. Even for me, I mean, we had the Baccarat kits,
Yes, yeah.
and that was about it. But now, to work on gas, you have to have a combustion analyzer. It's a $1,500 unit. You have to know what's coming, what it's outputting, what pressures, and I mean, it's totally different. It's a technician's job now. You're not a dirty oil burner guy anymore. You're a technician, and you're making a high wage. I try to stress that, and I think the wage is only going to go up because as demand goes up for these people and these kids getting in, you could easily be making over $100,000 a year in this industry.
Hey, look, when I sold our business in 2000, we had 6 servicemen at the time.
Right.
And our top guys, 2 of them were probably close to a 6-figure salary back then. And that was in the year 2000.
Yeah.
And now you have your 401ks, you have everything else. So no, it's a job that you can build a career.
Yeah.
And you're not going to have to change in the garage anymore like I used to have to, because that's how
Well, on
dirty
some
it is.
days you still may. You take a bath of oil by accident. It happens no matter what. But yeah, I mean.
Yeah, it's a technical job, and I think that people, kids can go a long way with it nowadays. And you know what? And it's a job too. You can probably, a clean license is so important in today's world because of the insurance regulations that are placed upon your business.
Yeah.
But you come into a place with a clean license in your 20s, and somebody like yourself that's probably willing to help teach these people.
Yeah, that's what I keep stressing. You could start from here, and certain places it's always like 5 years before you make top pay. You can make top pay in this industry as soon as you want.
Really?
If you can do what I think anyone's capable of doing within a year or 2. Like when I was coming up in Bayview, I was at almost top pay within 2 years because I hustled. I worked 6 days a week. Those are my days.
You learned.
Yeah, I learned because I was motivated to make more money.
Yeah.
And I wanted to be successful.